Hello, and welcome to another episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. I'm your host, Stephen Romney, filling in for Adam Mickelson, who is taking some much-needed time off to rest. However, I am not alone in this regard, as we are also joined by two other panelists, starting first with, coming right out of the shadows, Shadow Blazer 3000. Alex, how are you doing tonight?
I guess I'm doing all right, all things considered. Not a little bit of a busy week and work today, but still, I'm here doing okay.
Yes, at least nothing's on fire. That's what I like to say.
Yeah, nothing's on fire, so that's a plus always.
That's always
Indeed.
a plus.
Yes, and chiming in just now was our other panelist for tonight, Brenton Volley. Brenton, how has this day been treating you?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's been a good day.
All right, that's definitely good to hear. So, it may sound like we're kind of a little bit under the gun, but to be fair, it's been a long while since I posted, so rather than continue trying to do very unfunny, improvised banter, let's instead go into tonight's top story, which involves, well, I guess this wouldn't really count as Nintendo talk since it's multi-platform, but so far it's the only upcoming game news story that we've got this week, and that is regarding the development of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is a game many of you have probably been following if you're a fan of Koji Igarashi's work on the Castlevania series. This story coming to us from Anime News Network, which broke a couple of weeks ago, so we're still playing catch-up, reports that Inti Creates, a company best known for games such as Azure Striker Gunvolt and Mighty Gunvolt, as well as working on a few other titles, is no longer part of the development of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Now, some people, at least from what I've been researching, may have misconstrued the arrangement that Igarashi had in regards to their role in the development, with the story itself reporting that they were working on a prequel minigame, but not necessarily the game itself, as the game is being developed by Artplay. So far, there's not much else to really report on, aside from the fact that Inti Creates has officially stepped away from development of the game. Now, I myself haven't really been following Bloodstained as much as I should. Granted, I'm a Castlevania fan. I probably should be following it a lot more. But given what I've played of Inti Creates games, well, I could kind of take or leave them. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the panel. Do either of you have any thoughts or opinions about the departure of Inti Creates from the development of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night?
I'll go first on this one, since I am not like a super huge Castlevania fan. I had a chance to play it a little bit when I was younger, but not really in depth as someone like yourself, Romney. The fact that they're stepping away from developing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night may even possibly be considered a good thing if you think about it, because if they don't really have a really high reputation of developing quality games, then maybe this could give a better company a chance to really pick this up and give Castlevania fans the game that they're most eagerly wanting. Surprisingly, this is a game that I was kind of following. If news came up about it, then I would check it out, because the game sounded interesting, and I figured, I've never really delved into the Castlevania series, and if this is kind of like parallel to it, then maybe this is something that I can give a chance. So I would definitely love to see somebody else pick it up. I mean, it's how I know this is like a terrible comparison, but it's like the first game I can think of. But I mean, it's how we got Bayonetta 2. I mean, Nintendo came along and picked it up after Sega pretty much was like, yeah, we can't do anything. We can't give this game time. And then Nintendo just swoops on in and they're like, yeah, we'll pick it up. I mean, it made people mad because it was only available on Wii U. But I mean, with games becoming a little bit more becoming more available on other platforms, that's what I'm trying to say. We may be able to see a game such as this on more than just PlayStation and Xbox. I could even possibly see this going on the Switch. But those are...
It is confirmed to be going on the Switch. It was initially going to be on the Wii U, but with the announcement of the Switch, Igarashi announced saying, hey, we're canceling the Wii U version for the Switch version. And he also let people who chose that version, who pledged to the Kickstarter that funded the game, switch to another version. And I would kind of take the grain of salt of how much their departure would affect it, given that Igarashi's even clarified that the main company, Artplay, which Igarashi runs, is still the main developer of this game. It just seems that Inti Creates was working on a specific prequel minigame, kind of like how they made Mighty Gunvolt to pair along with Azure Striker Gunvolt.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, all hope isn't lost here. There's, like, the game will still more than likely come out. Will it come out exactly when everybody was thinking? Probably not. But it's now just more of a sit and waiting game of seeing who is going to come pick this up so that it can be completed.
Indeed. Alex, what are your thoughts on the departure of Inti Creates and whether or not it would actually affect Bloodstained's development?
Well, much like you, I haven't really been following Bloodstained that closely. Very, very casually know of the Castlevania franchise. I am interested in Bloodstained, though. It does look pretty interesting, pretty fun. And as for Inti Creates, as somebody who's enjoyed a couple of their games, they did work for 2 of the Shantae games, and I liked those. It's a little bit of a bummer, but I guess if they didn't have much to do with the main game that we're talking about, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, I guess there's not too much to be lost. It sounds like if it was just more of a sort of a side developer for a side project, not too much is really going to be lost here. I imagine that Igarashi's team are still going to be on track to continue work with, in spite of this.
Yes, that's definitely what it's looking like here. As for people wondering who is picking up the labor left in the wake of the departure, which according to the article has been since E3 2016, so they've been separated from the project for quite some time. But Artplay has since hired the developer Dico, spelled D-I-C-O, to work specifically on assets, level design, and basically filling in the gaps that Artplay doesn't have access to. So it could very well be similar to what Inti Creates did for certain other games like the Mega Man ZX series, where they designed the levels, designed some of the engines, but also created the sprites and graphics. And so it looks like the game is still on track. I'm guessing this was just a clarification that had to be cleared up in the wake of recent developments, which, again, have been pretty minimal since the unveiling and demonstration of Bloodstained at the most recent E3. At least that's kind of what it's looking like here. And, well, since we've pretty much made it clear we haven't been following the game as much, I think it's safe to say that it's probably on track to be released, especially since, we're all still trying to forget Mighty Number 9. And, well, hopefully this will be the Kickstarter game that will break that curse.
I hope. I mean, there's a lot of things that you would really, truly, hopefully hope to, like, honestly, that it will break the Kickstarter curse. So fingers crossed for this game. I know there's a lot of high hopes in the Castlevania community. This is the game that brings back that type of game and kind of re-sparks the love for that genre. And with collectathon 3D platformers kind of surging and trying to gain that momentum again through Yooka-Laylee and Super Mario Odyssey and that Squirrel game that was announced at E3 for Xbox One X, or just Xbox One in general, I think it's safe to say that, Bloodstained could be that game that could hopefully give resurgence to that genre. And And I don't see anything wrong with that because, I love 3D platformers. I'm excited for Super Mario Odyssey. I haven't really played Yooka-Laylee all that much since like it came out, but it was a game that I really did enjoy, or at least what I did play of it, I really enjoyed. So, fingers crossed, and I hope that everything goes well for it.
Yeah, the big difference that, at least between Mighty Number 9 and Bloodstained, is that Igarashi has been a lot more intelligent regarding the way he promoted the Kickstarter. He was upfront saying, hey, I have investors. This is just to show that there's interest in the project. And so far, he hasn't made a lot of the mistakes that Inafune made with Mighty Number 9, such as trying to start another Kickstarter before your previous Kickstarted game has even come out yet.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, because that was a thing. That was a thing, people. And so at the very...
I didn't know that was a thing. I hurt inside really bad right now.
Well, yeah, like Inafune, it was the whole Red Ash debacle where it was meant to be a successor to Mega Man Legends, and he started the Kickstarter for it before even finishing Mighty Number 9. So at least he got...
Why?
Yeah, so because he got cocky, plain and simple. At least Igarashi was smart enough to not make that mistake. He's clearly been working solely on Bloodstained, and I know he's done some consulting, but for the most part, he's been handling Kickstarter a lot better than Inafune and some of the other, well, other Kickstarter developers that have lofty ambitions. So if there was any safe bet with Kickstarter games, this is probably one of the safer bets. Emphasis on because, again, it's still a bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah, but I feel better with what you just said in regards to Bloodstained. So I'm just going to sit back and wait for everything to unveil itself.
And speaking of unveiling, that makes for a good segue to our next story, which involves, well, someone who used to do a lot of unveiling, depending on your opinion of whether or not she was genuine or not. Oddly enough, this is another story that broke 2 weeks ago, but it was incredibly surreal that we had to include it. I mean, given that we covered things like, North Korea threatening to nuke us for the interview, this had to make its way on the show. And that is that the makers of Grand Theft Auto, Rockstar Games, and Take-Two Interactive are being sued by a group of professional psychics for a parody character in Grand Theft Auto Vice City who resembles the late TV psychic Miss Cleo.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, we are not making this up. This is coming from comicbook.com, and the article stipulates that the group calling themselves the Psychic Readers Network, who allege that they have the rights to the likeness of the late Miss Cleo, both to the persona of Miss Cleo, but also to the likeness of the person who portrayed Miss Cleo, Yuri Harris, who passed away, I'm trying to see when that was, in 2016. So it was last year. So this company, Psychic Readers Network, is suing Rockstar and Take-Two Interactive and are alleging that they're still making money off of Miss Cleo's likeness with the re-releases on the PlayStation Network for Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Now, that's not the weird thing here, because the character they're taking umbrage with is a character by the name of Auntie Poulet, who you encounter in Vice City. You want to know the really messed up thing? Auntie Poulet had a voice actress by the name of Yuri Harris, whom you may remember that I just mentioned a minute ago was the person who portrayed Miss Cleo.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Suddenly things have gotten just that much weirder, which tends to be par for the course with TV psychics. But again, keep in mind that's coming from someone who's a professed skeptic, so take that for what it's worth. And so I'm going to open up to the floor because I've hit the main insanity of it. So, Brenton, Alex, what are your thoughts on this lawsuit? Do you think it has any merit, or do you think this is basically a cash grab?
I'm going to let you go first this time, Alex.
I think it's a cash grab. I don't see much merit. This is bizarre. Oh my god.
Well, if I could just quickly chime in there, as an antidote to what Alex is saying, this game came out in 2002, and in the article that you gave us, Alex, it clearly states in here the game came out in 2002. So gamers and professionals alike have had more, and I put emphasis on more than enough time to recognize the similarities between the two characters. So I mean, this is 15 years later. A group of psychics are now just deciding, oh, wait a second. But it's totally a cash grab. But sorry, keep going, Alex.
They must have foresaw that 2017 would really be the optimal time to file this lawsuit. We can't do it in 2002. My vision shows me 2017 is the right time to do it.
Good Lord.
But it's just added more to the irony is just the fact that the character was actually voiced by Miss Cleo. So
it's the best part.
Indeed. Now, from the looks of it, they own the rights. So, Psychic Readers Networks, they own the rights to the persona of Miss Cleo. And so, my guess, this is just my theory here. It's kind of the equivalent of those patent trolls who buy up royalties or likenesses or patents and then try to go after whoever they can to basically squeeze money out of people afraid to go to court. Problem is, they clearly did not do the research in how to actually go up against a game company, because it looks like they may end up going the way of Tim Langdell, where, you know, the game company is probably going to come back swinging, because the article was initially reported by TMZ, which, take that for what it's worth.
I am.
But, yes. And so Rockstar has issued an official statement, and that it is that these claims are entirely meritless and completely ridiculous. I am speaking English today, apparently. That's how baffling the story is. And it says that we will vigorously defend ourselves with regard to this matter. So, yeah, I don't expect a payout anytime soon, Psychic Readers Network. You probably would have an easier time, you know, betting on the horse races.
Oh, they would definitely have a better time betting on the horse races. I just have a couple of problems with like what I'm reading here and with what we're discussing. And again, it's just a fact that it's like 15 years later and this is now apparently a problem. Additionally, if this was going to cause some sort of heartache or were breaking any sort of like copyright or laws of any caliber, I'm pretty sure that the woman who portrayed Miss Cleo would have up front told Take-Two Interactive and Rockstar Games in that moment 15 years ago, hey, this seems a little bit sketchy because the character in whom I am going to be voicing appears to be a little bit like myself when I'm on TV playing a psychic. So I think that could cause some issues. We probably shouldn't even do this. Another issue that I have with this is, what are these like the professional psychics? What are they trying to get out of this? Are they trying to get a 15-year-old game like revoked and taken off shelves and out of people's homes? Like, I don't understand the end game here besides like getting money. This is all just super ridiculous, like you said, Romney, and none of this makes any sense whatsoever.
Yes, and it looks like I'm just looking at kind of the weirdness of it all, because I'm not seeing an exact amount they're going after. The suit that has been filed, again, coming from TMZ, so yeah.
Give or take.
Give or take what they say. I mean, I don't put much stock in the antics of a copy-addicted former attorney with a hard-on for Lincoln, but that's just me. But looking at this, the Psychic Readers Network claims that it spent well over $100 million creating and promoting the Miss Cleo persona over the years, and that Rockstar and company have gone on to make more than $500 million exploiting the character. And then I'm looking at this, it's just baffling, because not even TMZ has any actual like amount they're going for. I'm guessing they're probably hoping to create enough controversy to force some sort of out-of-court settlement. But again, as we've all pointed out, this is a 15-year-old game. The time to do this was, you know, with like Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean, I believe Lindsay Lohan actually sued Rockstar. It was either Grand Theft Auto 4 or 5 that actually had a Hollywood character similar to her. At least there it made sense, because the game was coming out. Here, it just baffles me. You are correct. It is Grand Theft Auto 5, and I do remember when that actually was going on. Like, the game still had not even come out, and Lindsay Lohan was taking the opportunity to be like, hey, I don't like this. There's a problem here. Like, she did it at the most opportune time. The perfect moment. Again, this is like 15 years later, and what was I thinking here? Oh, about how much revenue these two individual companies got. One, if these psychics even did their research, like you were saying before, Romney, like, this is Grand Theft freaking Auto.
Like, of course, it's going to accrue that much money in its lifetime because it's a very, very, very popular franchise that it's proven itself time and time and time again. And those companies have given very high quality video games to the public. They have developed amazing titles. And so, yeah, of course they're going to make that much money. But it's not like, but I mean, this is like one character out of several characters and an entire plot in one video game. Like, there's clearly no malicious intent. And on top of this, crap, what was I going to say? On top of this, like, it's all purely coincidental. Like,
Yeah.
Like, super, super, super coincidental. So I just cannot wait because I hope that, because I want to keep following this, and I hope this is something that we can discuss again when we see an outcome on of this, and we could talk about it on a show. Well, I cannot wait to see this blow up in the face of these psychics, because there's no way that they're going to be able to like properly prosecute Take-Two and Rockstar. They're going to come back swinging, like you said, and they're going to defend the hell out of themselves, and they're going to be like, "This is ridiculous. Like, do you really want to go to court for this?"
So I'm guessing what Brinton is saying, that this is the start of Brinton's war, a first for the podcast.
Oh my gosh!
All right.
This is the part of my personality that I don't think a lot of people see from me, and it's just the fact that I cannot tolerate stupidity. Like, my tolerance level for it is just in the negatives. The second anything stupid happens, it's just way too much for me. I can't handle it, and this is just one of those things. I just can't fathom why this is happening. It's so stupid, and it physically hurts me.
Wow, well that's definitely one way to put it.
That's how I'm putting it.
This is Brinton's war officially.
Yes. And no one really knows how this is going to play out, but I think we can pretty much all see the signs. I don't think you really need a tarot card to know how this is going to end. That's just me. Again, major skeptic who actually used to do tarot back in high school. So, yeah.
There you go.
That's
I really hope Leonard French is going to start covering this, because I just want him to read the briefs of the trial briefs and read the attorney's submissions for this, because this is going to be interesting.
This is gonna be fun. So now it's the waiting game.
Yes, and that's what we need right now, is a little bit of fun, as unfortunately we have to come down from this high point of silliness to discuss another lawsuit that is, sadly not as fun. And this is part of our YouTube talk, as let's just say there's quite a bit that's gone on in YouTube over the past while, some of it breaking this week, some of it having been posted at least last week. So, yeah, there's quite a bit going on. And so, speaking of lawsuits, we now have a YouTube channel that has decided to sue YouTube for revenue that was lost during what has since been branded as the adpocalypse, which was basically the point in time where YouTube was demonetizing a lot of videos that were deemed, and I'm using air quotes here, not family friendly, as well as that period of time when advertisers left and right were pulling their ad revenue from the website. The channel itself is called Zombie Go Boom, which basically advertises itself as a channel dedicated to killing zombie dummies with various weaponry. So basically, Mythbusters meets The Walking Dead, and they were one of the top 2,000, or I guess they still are, one of the top 2,000 YouTube channels in the world. And they are suing YouTube over the ad revenue that was lost after a number of those videos were demonetized without any warning. Now, there's a nice handy little Reddit post that Alex was able to dig up that helped sort this out, that explains the brief, that basically summarizes the lawsuit. And it is summarized as followed, that they allege that YouTube wasn't at fault for just changing their guidelines, but that they did it without informing anyone, so that Zombie Go Boom and other channels never had a chance to prepare, that being informed by YouTube that any automatic demonetization was for hate speech, which Zombie Go Boom did not qualify as, and yet they were still demonetized. So simply put, they were not informed and weren't given any chance to contest it. On top of YouTube never getting back to Zombie Go Boom for requests to repeal said demonetization, as well as YouTube being well aware of keeping their lifeblood in the dark about their decisions and guidelines, and the blatant unfairness of YouTube penalizing content creators for family-unfriendly content when not only do primetime television shows of similar content get advertisers, and the example listed in the suit, in the case of Zombie Go Boom and their content, it is far less graphic and less violent than the AMC series The Walking Dead, which gets a sizable amount of ad revenue. And it's not just Zombie Go Boom, it's apparently part of a larger suit with a few other YouTube channels. They just seem to be the biggest that are actually pushing for this lawsuit. Now I'll open up the floor to the panel. Do you think this lawsuit has any merit? Do you think YouTube's going to contest this, or are they going to try to settle out of court? Could this possibly go to trial?
This one's a little trickier, I feel like, because a lot of it is, well, YouTube essentially, it's a third-party hosting site, so I feel like YouTube may not really be under obligation to essentially inform us of anything or tell us anything. I mean, that's just good business practices for a site where people make content and said content helps make you money in return, but but again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really speak for how much true legal merit this is. I think that's for the courts to decide here, but I'm just not totally sure how this can fly. I appreciate the tenacity of these people for trying this class action and maybe trying to at least force YouTube's hand a little bit, but I can't help but think that Google's probably just going to bite back and bite back hard.
I was actually thinking the exact same thing when you said, they're just a third-party company, because I feel that it's Google who, I don't feel it is more than likely Google who's behind the scenes in a lot of decisions that are being made when it comes to practices within YouTube. I feel like going head-to-head with YouTube is just going to become going head-to-head with Google, which is going to become very tricky and very, very difficult. I like a lot what you said, Alex, just because, it's just YouTube essentially is a forum, a place where people can post videos and post their creativity and share the things that they enjoy doing, just, silly, funny crap that people do in their everyday lives. I feel that just with the generation, just with the current generation that we're in, becoming internet famous is a very top-notch thing. Just a lot of teenagers and a lot of just young adults getting, budding into their 20s. That's what they want to do. They want to be famous on Facebook. They want to be famous on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can go on and on and on all these different social media platforms. But the thing is, that's not, that may not be the thing for everybody. I'm happy for this Zombie Go Boom channel that they are, making some sort of revenue from the videos that they make. But this is going to be really, really tricky for them. This could possibly be the first time that we see either YouTube or Google come out and say something in regards to, the people who are making money from posting videos on this forum, essentially. So this is also going to be something interesting to follow and see what happens, because I know there's just been a lot of crap going on YouTube. There's just been tons of people are getting affected by it, and those who are trying to butt on it, such as Alec, all you guys, this could really, really hurt you if nothing changes going forward. Just one last little thing I want to say as an antidote to what I just said is that I was on Twitter today, and a YouTuber that I really enjoy watching, he said that he's really focusing just being a Twitch streamer because, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said Twitch is Twitch is a place where they evolve and they help others evolve, and YouTube is a place where they evolve to help people devolve. And so yeah, like it's extremely profound, and so I mean, it makes me sad because I really do enjoy watching his Let's Plays, but if he's having a much easier time actually making something of himself and growing his own internet fame through Twitch, then I'm just going to have to create a Twitch account and start watching his streams on Twitch, because that's the entertainment that I enjoy watching, and I don't want to lose that. And if YouTube is not going to make it easy for him to produce that content, then I'm just going to have to take my viewing entertainment elsewhere, and that's going to suck for this forum.
Indeed. And looking at the lawsuit itself, I mean, looking at the amount of claims of relief, it's up to like 6 claims for relief. And even some of the people in Reddit are chiming in where it feels like they're trying to push what boundaries of contract law they can push at in order to get some sort of settlement, especially given that they're demanding a jury trial. Whether or not it'll go to court or whether or not YouTube or Google will actually take it to court remains to be seen. So it seems less like they're going after revenue and more like they're trying to hold YouTube's feet to the fire, not realizing that Google has an army of lawyers, whereas the YouTube channels in question are being represented by 2 attorneys from the same firm, the specific firm being the law offices of Todd M. Friedman. And so looking at this, I mean, it may be awful to say, but I don't see this going as far as these channels are hoping, especially given kind of how broad they're trying to hit with these claims of relief. And so it's definitely a tricky thing, especially considering that, I mean, to basically illustrate, we are not employees of YouTube. We are basically the equivalent of freelancers, not to mention the amount of legalese you have to agree to in order to get channel monetization, which could probably come back to bite them in the butt if this actually went to trial. I'm pretty sure Google would find a way to explain, hey, they agreed to these terms, these were already outlined, because one of the allegations is a breach of contract allegation, but, well, given that when you accept the EULA and agree to the terms that allow you to monetize your YouTube channel, oftentimes those EULAs and those agreements often say, we reserve the right to alter the agreement at any time. It's kind of giving that whole Empire Strikes Back feel, where the YouTube channels are Lando Calrissian, and Google is Darth Vader saying, I have altered the deal. Pray I do not alter it further. Because they have that kind of power.
That's where we have all been over these last few months since the adpocalypse. It's just YouTube consistently revising its policies about what constitutes hate speech and so on, and what can be demonetized. It's just like, we're altering our rules. Pray we don't alter them further. And you're right. This is what's kind of terrifying about it and scary about it. This is why, at this point, I'm glad I'm not really dependent on my YouTube channel for my living. YouTube is still just a side thing for me. I still have hold down a job of my own, but for the channels that have made this their full-time work and make it their living, it's hit a lot of them pretty hard. And a lot of them have turned to gaining more sponsorships, turned to Patreons when they probably didn't want to do Patreons in the past. And it's forced the hand of a lot of people.
I feel there are so many people who have turned to Patreon just to keep, like, there is this one YouTube channel that I was watching. Unfortunately, the content got extremely boring and didn't even match at all to the description of the videos that he was producing. But essentially, it was a channel where they went outside the boundaries of video games just to get a different perspective of just like the game. And I thought that was really cool. And there were truly some videos where they did exactly that. Otherwise, a lot of the videos, it just wasn't like that at all. And I would say the majority of those videos where they didn't really break the boundaries and really looked at the game from different perspectives was a lot higher to the videos that actually did do that. And so I went ahead and took a look at the Patreon because they would talk about it in the end slates of their videos. And essentially, the Patreon, I mean, like, I praise and, I applaud this YouTuber for his audacity and tenacity in what he said in his description of his Patreon. But essentially, he was just like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I need your money so that I don't have, so that way, when my parents move to a different state, I can continue living where I am and I can live comfortably. So that way I can keep making YouTube videos full time without having to get a real job. And I just kind of sat there and I was a little baffled and a little taken back because, again, I was like, I applaud you. Like, that takes a lot of guts to say that. However, your content does not merit me giving you money for you to keep making crappy content. So if people are going to essentially, if you want me to help you pay your own bills, you're going to have to do something a little bit more wow for me to do that. And so I feel bad for these people who essentially are paying his bills because they're paying for very mediocre entertainment.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword with YouTube, where you have people trying to both live off Patreon, but also play the game of YouTube of getting, it's basically the quantity over quality argument. There are a couple of YouTube channels that I contribute to through Patreon that are kind of on the opposite spectrum, where they don't upload very often, but when they do, they make sure it's really polished. Like, one of my favorite channels happens to be Captain Disillusion, which is all about breaking down visual effects trickery used in YouTube videos to try to pass things off as being paranormal. And so it's one of those channels that I'm happy to contribute because they, instead of trying to flood the channel with just content for the sake of content, they take their time and usually come out with stuff that's pretty good. Granted, there have been some missteps, but it's usually been missteps in the case of taking jabs at certain things that you probably didn't need to take jabs at, as is the case with their Mandela Effect video. But it's very much one of those tricky things where, again, it sounds admirable on paper, but I don't think these channels really thought it through. It looks like they're more filing the lawsuit for the sake of drawing attention to the problem rather than looking for any sort of actual resolution. They're more trying to set a precedent in the courts rather than actually trying to, get damages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably what it's going to end up as. It's probably, if it doesn't get tossed, they'll just pretty much settle it or go along their ways or drop it altogether. Because if we are really literally just talking about two independent attorneys from a single law firm versus a massive corporation like Google, it's not going to stand very long.
Nope. Because another thing people forget, lawsuits are financial wars of attrition. Even if these two lawyers and these YouTube channels kept fighting it, it wouldn't take very long for Google to basically keep fighting back until they ran out of money, because that's more or less the name of the game with lawsuits, is you keep fighting until the other side can't fight anymore.
Hey, something that I used to do for work was just make sure that people's hospital bills got paid through third-party settlements whenever they were involved in car accidents. And I had to deal with a lot of patient attorneys, and literally I had an attorney say, well, you know what, we're just going to drag this on for as long as we can until the other person can't pay anymore, and then we'll take care of it then. Like, they literally stopped doing their jobs on that case because they're like, there's nothing we can do, so we're just going to wait till they can't do anything else because we're fine. And I was just like, okay, so what am I, like, this hinders me and my job, but that's like something entirely different. But that's like the games that attorneys pay until there's no more money left. Then it's like, oh, now I guess we got to do something. So it's just stupid.
Indeed. I mean, the most famous, well, not famous, but the most relevant example I can think of is what happened when the creators of Cyber 6, this popular Argentinian sci-fi comic, tried suing James Cameron over Dark Angel because of how similar the show Dark Angel was to Cyber 6, and they literally had to drop the suit because they ran out of money, because, again, two independent comic creators from Argentina going up against James frickin' Cameron. I mean, that right there shows what they were up against. And so, again, to bring it home, we'll continue following the story as it develops, but, well, it's probably not going to make as many waves as the YouTubers, as well-intentioned as they may be, are hoping it will.
Mm-hmm. I want to just say one more thing. Rising Sun Reviews actually put this in the live chat, and I just read it right now. But they said, personally, I like the Patreon model as opposed to the ad revenue, since it relies on the viewers for support instead of advertising, which can lead to worse content, which I can actually agree to, because if there's enough people out there who are making a lot of money off of YouTube and that ad revenue, then they're just going to be pushing out videos like, just like, a bakery could be pushing out tons of cookies. Quality could definitely start dropping. And so, like, I really do love what you have said, but additionally, if they are getting that, if they are getting viewer support, then the quality of the video better be there, or else there's no reason. Again, there's no reason for me to give that support. Like I was saying with that one YouTuber. Like, if you're going to have an entire YouTube channel where you show a different perspective of a video game by breaking out of the invisible wall and those boundaries, then you better give that to me. And that's just not something that I was being given. So there was no reason for me to help him pay his bills at that point.
Yeah. To that, though, I would counter that with such a model, you kind of run into the PBS problem, where you would either end up with a few major donors kind of governing the content of certain channels, as seen when certain YouTube channels try to do Patreon requests. A good example of this is with Linkara, where his main thing was reviewing comics, but then you had a lot of Patreon reviewers suggesting things like manga or episodes of TV shows, this, that, and the other, that doesn't really hew closely to the brand. Now, granted, his review of the Super Sentai episodes makes sense. He's gone on record that he does History of Power Rangers, he's a fan of Power Rangers. There it makes some sense, but then trying to have him review stuff like Degrassi, that's where you kind of run into the problem of you either have major donors kind of dictating what the creators create, or you kind of have the issue of is the support going to constantly be there? And you again kind of are back where you started, where, okay, do you make enough content that will guarantee more people will contribute through Patreon, or do you do something that's more creatively fulfilling? So, although in theory that model is better, it poses a lot of the same problems that the advertiser model does. It just changes the players in the game at this point.
And I think all this conversation is a really, really good segue into what we wanted to say next in terms of like our YouTube talk. So,
oh yes.
Yeah. So I think we've like made it very clear our feelings on this lawsuit. This is also something that I would love to continue discussing as it develops and we get more information. But I want to take what we are discussing now and apply it to what we wanted to talk about next.
Of course, and if people want us to approach this topic in the future, well, let us know in the chat or let us know in the comments below after this has gone up, and we'll be happy to continue discussing it because, well, YouTube's an ever-changing industry. And speaking of ever-changing, our second half of our YouTube talk is another piece of somber news, and this broke literally this week. As some of you who watch a lot of gaming YouTubers may be familiar, there is a channel by the name of The Completionist, hosted by the YouTuber Gerard Khalil. Now, for the first, I don't follow the channel, so I don't know how long, but for the first, sizable amount of time in the life of the channel, he had a collaborator by the name of Greg Wilmot, who, after a bit of a falling out, the two parted ways, with Gerard still continuing with The Completionist, and Greg Wilmot going off and doing his own thing. And what has broken this week is that Gerard has announced on his YouTube channel that he was effectively issued what is more or less described as a cease and desist by his former collaborator, Greg Wilmot, to effectively remove any and all videos that Wilmot contributed to and took part in on The Completionist off of the YouTube channel. Now, in his announcement, he was even advised by friends, family, and even his legal team that he could fight this. but instead he's decided to acquiesce to the request and will be removing all the videos featuring Greg Wilmot on the Completionist channel after 30 days. In fact, incentivizing people to download and redistribute the videos as much as they would like, so long as they don't try to monetize it. And so I'll go ahead and open the floor. Brenton, Alex, is Gerard right in taking down these videos with Greg Wilmot? Does Greg even have a case to stand on? What are your thoughts on this current development for the Completionist?
I've been following the Completionists for a little while now, and I've enjoyed a lot of their videos. I think recently I've ended up more watching Gerard's Let's Plays instead, but I still watch the Completionist. And I remember when the parting with Greg Wilmot happened, they were pretty quiet about what went down. We all just kind of, I think, assumed creative differences happened. And that what really surprises me is after 2 years now, because this happened in 2015, after 2 years, Wilmot comes back and suddenly demands that Khalil remove all prior videos with him. And I think Wilmot's being incredibly petty and childish about it, and pretty vindictive. The way I see it is, Wilmot, you participated in a shared reaction. If this was all his content, if Wilmot was like the primary, let's say the situations were reversed here, because the way the Completionist has always been, Gerard's always been kind of the star, so to speak, of the show, and Wilmot was kind of always the background character to crack jokes, be narration, so on. But if the situation was reversed and it was really more of Greg's kind of show and Gerard was more background, I'd say Wilmot had more of a leg to stand on. But considering most of this was Gerard's work, I'd say, Wilmot, you got nothing, especially considering the original pilot episode was co-written with people like JonTron, with Aaron Hansen, Egoraptor, by Gerard. I think Greg also wrote that one too. So he's also, and there's also been other episodes that have brought on now famous YouTubers like Aaron Hansen and JonTron and Pat Contry, the NES Punk. So it's like, well, what about them? They don't get a say in what happens to content they themselves participated in. I'm just like, what gives you the right to suddenly dictate 3 years of material that you were a part of all of a sudden, and why choose 2 years later to suddenly come out and vindictively demand that your former partner and your now former friend remove them all?
Indeed, and that is something that is a bit upsetting with all of this, especially now. I tried looking at it kind of from the perspective of Wilmot and what he's trying to allege here, especially given that we have been seeing a whole rash of contract disputes and work for hire disputes, even on the podcast itself that we've covered. And so, to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, what he may be trying to allege here is that maybe there wasn't an exact term in the contract, if there was a contract drafted, that acknowledged that it was work for hire or not. And it's always tricky when it's a YouTube channel that's started by two friends, where the ownership isn't really clearly delineated. And so I can understand maybe why Gerard is kind of trying to take the road of, okay, let's remove them to avoid fanning the flames. That way it doesn't, because granted, he's going to suffer in terms of revenue, but I understand kind of where he's coming from, given that ownership of the channel and kind of where the line begins and ends in terms of ownership and who contributed what is very blurry here. I can see why he's taking the safe approach of removing them after a set amount of time, so that he doesn't have to deal with the potential legal entanglements. At least that's my perspective on the whole thing.
And I understand why Gerard is giving in. I figure he probably doesn't want to go through lengthy disputes and legal battles when it would probably be just as easy. And this is his plan now, to just go back and remake these episodes again, now with all new content and all by himself. Essentially, not totally by himself. He has a crew. But it's, I feel like Wilmot doesn't have much of a leg to stand on, just because this was not primarily your content. You contributed to it, but I think overwhelmingly the contribution has always been Gerard's.
Indeed. Brenton, what are your thoughts on this development with Gerard and the Completionist channel?
Well, I'm reading the tweet that Alex had sent out to the three of us, and a lot of things that people are saying on Twitter reflects a lot of what the both of you have just discussed. It sounds like, and I mean, I don't really follow the completionists all that much, nor did I know that this was a thing at all. But it just sounds definitely like this Greg guy is being extraordinarily petty, and that this is literally coming out of nowhere. I do have a quick question to ask though. Do we know, like as a public, what happened between them, or is that still just like completely up in the air?
Still up in the air.
Yeah, it's been relatively quiet. They haven't really explained what specifically prompted the falling out. They've both been very quiet about it, and we probably won't know the details for quite some time.
Well,
okay.
To an extent, I guess we kind of do. I mean, Gerard very vaguely tapped on it when he put up this update video. He just kind of said that, you know, they had some differences in vision, creative differences about where the company was going to go from in the future, and they just couldn't have reconciled their differences, but they didn't get too specific. But it's always been pretty vague.
Yeah, I guess what I want to say to that is, or like, yeah, I guess what I want to say to that is, sorry, Greg, but this is extremely petty. Like, yeah, you contributed to a lot of the content when you were part of that One Video Gamer LLC, but the thing is, like, you're no longer a part of it, and I don't really feel like you have a right to say, at this point, you have to take down all this content. Like, too bad it's there. It's kind of like, it's like, what's this? There we go. It's like Kojima coming back at Konami. If I'm thinking of the companies and people's names correctly, just him coming back and being like, all these video games I worked on, I need you to not sell them anymore, and all these properties are not mine.
Yeah. Knowing Konami, that would not work.
No, it wouldn't, like, that wouldn't work at all. Instead, what happened? He made his own video game studio. He moved on. He was the better person. Obviously, if we knew more of what happened between these two, maybe I could have a better insight on what to do next. But honestly, like, do something with your creativity. If there were creative differences that wasn't going to help that One Video Gamer LLC move forward, why don't you take the creativity that you wanted to put into that company and make something new? Like, yeah, is it going to be difficult? Yes, but obviously you already know how difficult it is because you were a contributor to that One Video Gamer. So why can't you just start something new? Like, that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. Like, I know nothing about business, so I'm just kind of talking out of my ass right now and just being very, I guess, ignorant about it. But I'm just again, I was just reading all the tweets and the discussion on Twitter, and essentially tons of people were just calling him out on how ridiculous he was being, and he was like, "Yeah, I know," like trying to act all tough about it, just like, "Yeah, it's whatever." It's like, no, it's not whatever. This is childish. Like, this is childish.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to say it. And honestly, Twitter's pretty much in full, like, confrontation witch hunt mode. And granted, people on both sides seem to be arguing in favor and against it. And so, honestly, like with any other YouTube drama, both legal or otherwise, it ain't pretty.
No, this it'll be interesting to see what happens next. That is for sure. I feel like that's the overarching theme of tonight. It'll be interesting to see what happens next in all of these news bits.
Yes, and honestly, given all that's going on, I can't, to kind of reiterate, while Gerard probably could fight this, I can understand why he doesn't. Lawsuits, like we've mentioned, are financial wars of attrition, and given he's calculated the amount it would take for him to hire his legal team to actually contest this, as opposed to how much he would lose by simply taking down the videos, given that his channel's in a then when the falling out occurred. I think it's looking at it. I know some people don't like it, but I can see where Gerard is coming from, and honestly, it's probably the better option in the long run to just not start a fight that you're not sure you can actually finish.
You know, when I first heard this, it kind of reminded me of when Crispin Glover went after Back to the Future for when they kind of worked around Crispin Glover's absence in Back to the Future 2 by using a stand-in and stock footage, and Glover ended up, I think he sued Universal and Amblin for it, and I know I don't know if he won or if it was settled, but I know it was enough to get the Screen Actors Guild to force a contract clause where actors' likeness cannot be used without permission. So, but the way I see it is, I don't quite see this as sort of this on that same league. It reminds me of it, but with like Back to the Future, that was working around already existing stock footage of Crispin Glover in Back to the Future, as opposed to this, where it's old episodes that are now archived, and you know, it feels too much like basically you're going back and you're editing out the existence of a prior contributor, and I'm just like, you could almost apply this to an infinite amount of examples. It's like, okay, what about X TV show, which X actor left because they didn't get enough pay? Are you gonna go back and erase X actor's contribution from TV show? So I just
like a good
really,
example. Yeah, to kind of use that example in a timely way. Imagine if Thomas Gibson decided to sue the people who make Criminal Minds and said, "Hey, I was fired off the show. I did not give permission for you to rerun and have any episodes with my likeness," meaning they would have to go back through the, I think it's 6 seasons of show to basically remove any iteration of Thomas Gibson.
Oh, that would just destroy the series if something like that were to happen. Like, he was such a pivotal character until he got booted off the show. I haven't even watched a season where he got booted off. I just haven't had around time to even get on it. That's something entirely different, Brenton. But still, that would just completely destroy the show. And that's that's years and years and years and years of content that nobody has time to go back and just edit out the likeness of Gibson. No way in hell anybody would do that. No, and that's why this whole thing is just so petty on behalf of Greg Wilmot. Just so petty. He's asking something to be done that just would take way too much time.
Indeed. I think we've pretty much made our points of where we stand in this issue. I mean, all I can say is I wish both parties the best, that hopefully once the dust settles on this, everybody can kind of move on and go back to making content that they want to create, and that we can hopefully not have to keep reporting on a lot of these YouTube channel disputes. But let's face it, it's going to keep happening because, like I keep mentioning, YouTube's in the midst of its growing pains as an industry. Not just YouTube, but internet video in a nutshell is in the midst of some growing pains. And with that actually wraps up our tech portion for the evening. And so now on to, well, happier news or not, depending on where you stand, as we now move into the entertainment portion with another story that broke literally at the start of the week, and that is also coming from Anime News Network, that Sony Pictures Television has acquired a majority stake to Funimation. Yes, Sony now owns the anime distributor Funimation. It is not a fake story. This actually happened. Sony paid, or at least the deal that still needs to be approved, is to the tune of $143 million for a 95% stake in Funimation. However, CEO Gen Fukunaga will retain a minority stake and will still remain CEO. It basically is now that Funimation is now being brought under Sony alongside their other numerous anime-related ventures, such as Animax, Kid Station, and a couple of others that I know I'm forgetting.
I'm sorry, that was funny how you said that. Alex, I want to hear what you have to say about this first.
Okay, well, I mean, right now I'm a little bit sort of, whoa boy, what's this gonna entail now? Because it's always a little nerve-wracking when a company you've been following for so many years and like has suddenly been bought out by a much larger company. Now, I've read through a lot of speculation posts. Answer Man also wrote a pretty in-depth column of what might entail and what to expect. You know, I think I remember when we were still talking about this when it was still in the rumor stages of when I think it was like both Sony and Verizon were potentially looking at acquiring Funimation, right? We kind of talked what a Sony acquisition would mean. I, of course, wondered what on earth would happen with the Aniplex of America branch. Well, I've gotten a little more clarity on that since, because Aniplex of America is, of course, a division of Aniplex, which in itself is a division of Sony Music Entertainment, which is another branch of the Sony family. But apparently, as of now, I guess Kaz Hirai's wanting to change this. The Sony branches don't really talk to each other all that much. They all just kind of exist under one big parent. We'll see if that changes in the near future. Who knows? But right now, it's just sort of like, well, we got the kind of vague typical press release corporate spin Q&A about, oh, nothing will change, everything's going to be the same, but I really kind of doubt everything's going to stay the same. We'll have to wait and see. So much of it's wait and see, but some of the stuff's a little concerning, like the potential Crunchyroll deal that began earlier this year could potentially end soon. Other Funimation services might end, like Funimation's portal site might get merged into another site by Sony.
Yep, especially the site that the Anime News Network article mentions is the streaming service Crackle. So what we could see is basically Funimation now being merged with Crackle. But again, it's too early to tell since this, because again, they've made the bid, but this still has to go through layers upon layers of regulatory approval, as well as getting certain contracts drafted before we can actually say that the buyout has been made official. Yes, and so I'm actually looking at some of the extra information here, because, and again, there's like one way to look at it, considering that Sony had a lot of anime stakes in the anime industry in Japan, this looks like it's more or less their way of trying to claim a stake in the United States, which other companies have been trying to for years, but to varying degrees of success. I mean, case in point, most recently is the way Warner Brothers handled the release of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and how that turned out, which, for those of you listening who don't know what happened, it did not go very well.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, all I can hope from this personally, as a fan and as an avid collector for all things anime, is that Sony is going to be kind of more or less a little hands-off. I don't think they would be totally hands-off if they're buying a company for $150 million here. They're going to want something to do with it, but it's just sort of, again, it's all the big questions of what are they going to do? What are their plans? Who really knows? But it's just, I really don't want to see Sony, again, try to bring the Japanese model of how anime gets distributed over here. It's not really worked out for NISA. It's only working out for Aniplex of America because they have all the hot shows that people want. But Funimation's been doing so well on their own by following their own, I mean, as much as they can. Obviously, they're still subject to what the Japanese want, but Funimation's always been very good about doing what Funimation does in breeding anime out at reasonable lengths, dubbing them, giving them really nice authoring releases, and not charging an arm and a leg for them.
Yeah, plus one thing to kind of consider is that while the company that has the majority stake is owned by Sony, they are actually based in the United States, specifically Culver City, California. So whether or not they're trying to adopt the Japanese model of anime production or not remains to be seen, since they're primarily television distributing shows like Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, reruns of Seinfeld or Breaking Bad, The Blacklist, so on and so forth. And so it could just be a case where maybe they're just wanting to get some of that distribution money. I mean, considering how profitable anime DVD sales have been, as well as the rising interest in streaming anime that all anime distributors here in the United States are trying to navigate in some way, shape, or form. So whether or not they're trying to administer some sort of control over what Funimation does and does not do, it, again, remains to be seen, since, again, this is Sony officially saying, hey, we are making this $143 million bid for a majority stake, and it has to go through a lot of government oversight and regulation, and basically they have to go to, I don't know which branch of the government, but I know it's specific committees that they say, hey, we want to buy out this company, do we have permission? And after a big back and forth, and negotiating over what will and won't be done, then they'll either get their approval or not. You see it all the time when companies try to merge, and people kind of fighting against certain mergers since it would result in monopoly. I mean, case in point, Time Warner Cable and Comcast, Humana and Cigna, in the case of insurance. But as Justin Savakis, who wrote the Answer Man article Alex referred to earlier, puts it, this is still very early on. We just know Sony is making the bid, and now we just have to wait for whether or not the bid is approved.
Awesome. I'm trying, like, I don't feel like there's a whole lot that I could say about this. I feel like you two have hit the nail on the head pretty hard. I guess the only concern that I have is because I do watch anime from time to time, but not as intensely as I used to, or not as intensely as Alex does today. But I kind of feel that Sony has had kind of a bad track record with certain things. Like Spider-Man is one of those things that comes to mind.
Oh yeah. Like Spider-Man, Ghostbusters, and, well, the Emoji Movie they're currently getting a lot of flack for right now.
Oh, like, I don't need to see that film to know it's gonna be shit. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So you
heard it here, folks.
So I mean, I'm just worried because of their track record. Reckon I did give Ratchet and Clank a really, really good review when I went to go see it with you, Romney. So, I mean, they do have some good ups, but I feel that it doesn't really outweigh the downs. And considering that they want to have this 95% stake if Funimation does go ahead and take the bid, that worries me as well, because that just says to me that they want to have a lot of say in what goes on, and the minority percentage that the CEO is going to still reign over isn't going to be enough for him to voice his opinion if there's any concerns that arise when changes start flooding in to Funimation. So I just hope that the right people are thinking about this bid very thoroughly, and they really considered our options here when it comes to what could potentially happen if they were to actually take it and be brought into Sony. So it just worries me. I would hate to see a genre of entertainment that I do like to dabble and be a part of every once in a while start to just become very, very bad, for a lack of a better word.
Yes. And again, to kind of assuage some fears, here's kind of the way I may see it. Either it would be a case that Sony is wanting to acquire it for the sake of control, but it could also be a case of, hey, we're struggling to get a foothold in the media market. Rather than trying and failing to distribute anime on our own, let's go to a company that clearly knows what it's doing and has been doing it since the 90s, since that's another angle that Sony could be coming out with this, where they're thinking, okay, we could try setting up our own anime distribution arm in the United States in the very competitive pool between Sentai Filmworks, Funimation, a few others. I'm not that familiar with how many distributors there are. I just know there are quite a few of them. Whereas here it could be Sony saying, okay, we want to get into this market, but rather than risk like trying and failing on our own, let's instead acquire a company that knows what it's doing and basically come to some sort of agreement. Again, I'm with you, though. The 95% stake is a bit concerning. So, again, it remains to be seen just how much control they're going to exert, but we're not going to know about how far this is going to go until well down the line. Like, at least, not until at least next year, when by then the buyout will have either been approved or denied.
All right. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we've pretty much...
I was going to say that was really well said.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much... I wish I could pull up the GIF, but my computer is running slowly enough. I don't want it to blue screen on me. But I think we've pretty much beaten the horse. It's as good as dead, so we can probably move on to the next topic, which has me concerned for a variety of different reasons. And...
Ooh, I want to hear this.
All right, well, in the next story we have in our entertainment segment that the other two panelists are giggling after a teaser like that, apparently we're getting another sequel to The Karate Kid. Not the Jackie Chan remake with Jaden Smith, the original Karate Kid. Specifically, a sequel in the form of a television series that is going to launch on YouTube Red. Now, I'll be honest, the concept has me a bit curious, as the current working title is Cobra Kai, and will have the original stars Ralph Macchio, who played Daniel LaRusso, and William Zabka, who played, what was his name? Johnny Lawrence, who played Johnny Lawrence in the original film. And it's basically a television series picking up a good 30 years or so after the events of the original Karate Kid, this time from the perspective of Johnny Lawrence, as he seeks to reopen the infamous Cobra Kai Karate Dojo, and in the process reigniting his rivalry with Daniel LaRusso, who is struggling to maintain his balance in his life without the guidance of his mentor, Mr. Miyagi, who was played by the late Pat Morita. Now, in theory, the concept I'm on board with, especially given that, okay, it's the villain from the original film being given the main character slot this time, given what he went through as a result of both Karate Kids Part 1 and 2, where Kreese was basically going to kill him. This would be definitely interesting to see of how he tries to revive Cobra Kai. But the part that has me worried is the fact that it's coming to YouTube Red.
Yeah, that makes sense. I am 100% right there with you. I love the idea of the show. This is something that I would 100% watch. However, I refuse to support YouTube Red.
Yes, that's kind of the key thing. And coincidentally enough, this is also another Sony project, as it's being brought to us by Sony TV and a few other studios. Yes, it actually says that they're partnering with Sony TV to bring this to life, I guess because Sony owns the rights to The Karate Kid, so that's probably why. But looking at this, apparently the series is going to be written and executive produced by Josh Heald, John Hurwitz, and Hayden Schlossberg, with Heald being the writer behind Hot Tub Time Machine, while Hurwitz and Schlossberg are famous for the Harold and Kumar films and the hit comedy American Reunion. And now I'm suddenly even more worried about how this series is going to turn out. Now, granted, one project by one screenwriter does not necessarily color the entire body of the work, but given that I don't particularly care for Hot Tub Time Machine and Harold and Kumar,
Yeah.
Now,
all right.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Main reason I'm worried, Karate Kid is one of my favorite films, so that's why I'm naturally worried. I mean, on the one hand, I like the concept, and on the other hand, the fact that they're bringing back Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, it's definitely a story that I would want to see told of, okay, what happened to these characters that were once heated rivals? It kind of is the classic case where you do a film about someone returning to their high school reunion, and you have all of those like antagonistic relationships, but then you go to the high school reunion and you find that the person you had this antagonistic relationship with is now like a completely different person. I mean, off the top of my head, if it's coming from Johnny Lawrence's perspective, does that mean that Daniel LaRusso has kind of almost become the bad guy in this case? Has he become more like John Kreese, or has he fallen to the dark side without the guidance of the peaceful Mr. Miyagi? That's something I can see being worth exploring. It could also be a case of, okay, how does Johnny Lawrence shake off the reputation of both not just John Kreese, but also Terry Silver in terms of how Cobra Kai was seen in the world of karate. That's how passionate I am. I'm even including part 3 here, people.
Let's just be glad it's ignoring the last, or not the last, the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank, which apparently, I guess, killed Daniel off screen or something. Isn't that how that movie went?
No, it's not that they killed Daniel off screen. It's that for some reason, Mr. Miyagi decides to more or less switch places because the grandmother of Hilary Swank's character is going to California, and so he goes to where she lives, which is on the other side of the country, to look after Hilary Swank's character. Again, it's one of those really bad sequels that you can tell that they were only able to get the one guy back. And again, it's disappointing because the concept sounds like a good concept, but again, it just goes to show the good concept given to the wrong people can result in a bad movie. Yeah,
that accurately describes that movie to a T. I remember watching it and I was just like, time machine, where are you?
maybe that's why they're getting the writer of Hot Tub Time Machine. Maybe that's the secret plot twist, is that they're going back in time to undo that.
Oh my gosh, that'd be way interesting to see them pull something off like that if that were the actual case with the plot of the show. Again, I feel like anything else I say going forward is just going to be a repeat of what I already stated. But I'm not a huge fan of YouTube Red. I do not want to support it because it takes it takes away ad revenue from those who deserve the money, and just continues to line the pockets of those who do not need the extra money. I do praise them though for actually making a television show that is not a spin-off of a YouTuber.
Yes, that is something that I can agree there, because I've been seeing those ads nonstop. It is driving me nuts.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you. But again, some praise. I think that's pretty cool. But personally, I think this is something that I would rather watch on Netflix. Not to say that the production and the quality of the show is going to be super bad, but I already throw my fiance and we already throw our money at Netflix. We're extremely behind on shows, but I mean, that's totally another show that I would love to add to our list of never-ending television shows. But I mean,
yeah, this really should have gone on Netflix. I think it's better suited for Netflix than YouTube Red.
But on the one,
sorry, all I wanted to say is that I feel that YouTube Red has established themselves as we just make spin-offs and continue to grow the content of YouTubers and give them something a little bit more to work with on top of giving them a little bit more money to put into their pockets. That's what I feel YouTube Red is. And so I'm just I'm not paying money to watch additional content from YouTubers that I don't really give a whole care about. I would rather throw my money at Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, where they have much better, interesting television productions that I would rather watch. YouTube Red is now now they're making this, and I'm I want to watch it, but I don't support YouTube Red, so I guess I'm not watching it.
Yeah.
Sucks for me.
Although to that point, I would say maybe this is their way of taking a step in the right direction, trying to get away from, let's make spin-offs with YouTubers. I mean, at the very least, I'd rather watch this than that crappy dance flick that they were trying to push when YouTube Red first launched. So here, maybe it'll be the start of a new transition where it's okay, let's actually, try creating actual content with, actually good people and not just hoping that the YouTube notoriety will carry it, because let's face it, I'm with you. A lot of the expanded shows by YouTubers, they have no appeal to me. Whereas here, this may be a step in the right direction. If they do a first episode trial thing, I'll probably at least watch that. And if it gets me hooked, then hopefully I'll continue watching it. But at the very least, this looks like it may be a step in the right direction. At least it's got a solid enough story. It's got me curious. I'm just going to withhold anything until I at least start seeing a trailer or at least seeing how this is coming together. It's set to be debuting in 2018, and it's going to be a series of 10 half-hour episodes. So relatively short compared to most other TV series, but for a miniseries, par for the course. Again, I'm kind of excited, but the one thing I really hope, and it's the reason why I like the Karate Kid films, is that they remember that the Karate Kid is not just about the action. It's at its heart, it's a martial arts film about the philosophy of the martial arts, not just the punching and the kicking, but how you, basically the reasons why you learn the martial arts. I mean, you have the famous scene where Daniel is practicing his kata on the bow of the boat, and Miyagi basically asks him why he's learning karate, and Daniel says, like, so I never have to fight. Because that's the Karate Kid in a nutshell. It's about the philosophy, not the action, and I really hope the people making this understand that core part of it, because otherwise you end up with the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank.
Yep. Very, like, extremely well said, Romney. And one thing that I want to expand on that you just said, I hope that this show is YouTube's way of getting more television shows. If I were to see a lot more of this, a lot more of like a Marvel show, a DC show, like some sort of comedy, like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, something edgy like Orange is the New Black, just anything but YouTube channel spin-offs, then I would possibly consider supporting YouTube Red at that point. But until now, until then, I think I will be more than happy to watch a first episode trial, because I know that they do that every so often. I think that's the only way I'm going to be able to at least watch the pilot of the TV show. But again, until then, sucks for me. I'm not going to be able to watch it.
Yeah. Well, if we're throwing suggestions for YouTube Red, hey, YouTube Red, how about throwing some money to the Assassin's Fist people so we can actually get a good live-action Street Fighter series?
Ooh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, because they're a YouTube channel. They started on Machinima, technically, but that could be something like, hey, team up with Capcom. Fund this live-action Street Fighter series that they've been trying to get off the ground. That's a good way to create content that would get people to, pay for the service. Just
Absolutely.
saying. I mean, yeah, because there's quite a few shows that could be expanded beyond just, let's make a reality show with YouTubers. Like, okay, well, what about getting the people behind Mortal Kombat Legacy, having them make a YouTube Red show that is based on Mortal Kombat or some other video game, kind of use that way to expand to get fans. I mean, given the amount of gamers, that could be something that you could actually get people to use YouTube Red for, because it's like, you could watch something involving PewDiePie, or, watch this really high-quality fan-produced series based on Mortal Kombat. And granted, I'm not a Mortal Kombat fan, but again, I would rather watch a Mortal Kombat TV show than scare PewDiePie.
And honestly, there's so many television shows from mainstream networks that were canceled. One that comes to mind is the Mindy Project. Hulu picked that back up, and they're like, we'll continue the show. And it's been super successful off of Hulu. I say they just take shows that were canceled off of mainstream television and put them onto YouTube Red. Keep them alive, keep them going. Because I know there are television shows that I really enjoyed, but then they got kicked off of the air because it's the ratings were really bad because they're competing against really, really popular television shows, and the ratings couldn't keep up. Put them on YouTube Red. Keep these actors and actresses' careers going. Keep these television shows alive, so that way I can actually see what the hell happens. Because let me tell you, it's really frustrating when you get really emotionally involved into something, and then it's we're not continuing it. And it's thanks, America. You just crushed my every hope and dream of knowing what the hell happens next.
Or alternately, the worst alternative is where they know they're being canceled, so they try to throw together some haphazard conclusion to tie everything up, when you know that they weren't planning on having it wrapped up that quickly. Case in point, The Cape. I was really into that show, but it got so bad where the last episode wasn't even aired on TV. You had to watch it on NBC's website, and then it's just we have to tie up all these loose ends to kind of wrap things up in a very haphazard way because we didn't know we were getting canceled. We were told at the 11th hour, and so we're trying to wrap up all these plot lines. Seriously, they tried wrapping up the whole, the villain was arrested in a freaking blog post. A freaking blog post!
Oh my gosh.
Shit.
That's really hard. like that's when you have to give some sympathy to the writers, because it's like, hey, you got to wrap this up, and it's like, I gotta get creative.
Yeah, it's just I was frustrated. Mainly, it partially was because they had a creative villain contest I submitted, and I didn't even really get to see what they would do with the villain that won. And yeah, point being, yeah, there's a lot of things YouTube Red could do to actually be more competitive instead of trying to bolster the YouTube stars, because it's like the same reason why that America's Got Talent episode where they did the YouTube special fell and failed terribly, because you can tell the people that did that episode had no idea how YouTube notoriety worked, because they're like, oh, this YouTuber's popular, let's have her perform. Not realizing, oh, well, Rebecca Black is not popular for the right reasons. So, you know, maybe having her perform on America's Got Talent, probably not the smartest idea. Just saying.
Oh, man. Did she really perform on America's Got Talent?
Yes. Yes, she did. Like, they brought, like, Rebecca Black, Tay Zonde, basically people that they just literally looked at the view counts, but not realizing, oh, these people seem popular, but not realizing, oh, well, these people are popular for a gimmick. Now, Tay Zonde, I can forgive, because at least Chocolate Rain has something you can dig into it. Granted, it's still very, like, a very one-note song, kind of literally, but bringing Rebecca Black, that was very much the case of, okay, NBC, you had to have done some research.
I've only, this is something I obviously missed. I only started watching America's Got Talent last year. But
yeah,
that's besides the point.
Well, yeah, keep in mind, when they did this was back when Jerry Springer was the host instead of Nick Cannon. Because first they had Regis Philbin. Not even Regis. The first host was Jerry Springer. That's when they had Brandy and David Hasselhoff as judges. And so, yeah, that was in the earlier. So you didn't miss much by not watching the early seasons. I
definitely missed it then, because because my first season was Nick Cannon, and then the second season I've been watching is the current one with Tyra Banks, who I love so much. But anyway, that's completely off topic.
Yeah, point being, you're not missing much. I sat through the crap. You didn't miss much.
Cool, because a lot of the talent that I've been watching has been pretty intense and pretty awesome.
Yep. All right. Well, we definitely got off topic there for quite a bit.
Yeah, my bad. I'll blame myself on that one.
Right. Well, at least it's a nice appreciated moment of levity, as although we are out of news stories for tonight, we do have a discussion topic that relates to the YouTube drama that we covered back in the Tech Hour, and is also a bit of follow-up regarding the Angry Joe news that we covered. Was it last week or a couple weeks before? I'm not sure. I think it was last week.
I think it was last week.
Yeah, pretty sure it was last week. If I'm wrong, people will probably correct me pretty quickly. And so the discussion topic we have is this question. I don't know who wrote it, or if it was through email or rewritten, but the question is this. In light of the recent situation with Angry Joe and the issues he has had in the comments, people have begun to wonder, is it against free speech to disable and or moderate YouTube comments? And is it more hurtful to the YouTube channel or to discourse in the long run? I'm going to withhold my opinion on this, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the floor.
Cool. Can you give me really quick the TLDR of what you all discussed?
All right. The very short version of what happened with Angry Joe. He posted an announcement video saying he was going to take a 2-month vacation from doing his Angry reviews. A lot of his fans got pissed off, and as a result of a lot of the backlash, he decided to disable his YouTube comments. Now, the main thing we discussed was the disconnect and kind of the fact that a lot of people who watch YouTube videos tend to forget that it is a real person producing this content. That was more or less the crux of our discussion, but we didn't really touch upon the fact that he had disabled, that he had disabled his comments, and that was something that a lot of people were wanting us to follow up. But there have also been recent developments regarding other channels deciding to either disable or moderate their comments on their channels. Most notably, at least in the examples given to us by Adam, was in the case of Sid Alpha in light of some of the recent happenings on his channel covering, well, that which we've already said we weren't going to cover much further. And so that's kind of the very, very scattershot short version.
No, that is perfect. Thank you for doing that for me. So since that is not fresh in my mind, I'm going to go ahead and just jump in really quick, primarily because I feel like I've been putting Alex under the spotlight for the past couple of discussions. But
All right.
no, you're fine. Anyway, so I guess what I want to say about this is disabling comments. I feel that could be taken as a First Amendment violation, taking away free speech, taking away somebody's right to be able to be upset, even though they're completely out of line and ridiculous. As, like you said, Romney, people do forget that we are regular people who have regular lives. For example, if somebody were to start trashing Drac because he's not here tonight, I would flat out say, hey, guess what? He's taking a break. Don't you need a break too every once in a while? I think you need a break from the internet right now, et cetera, because then I would start getting really sassy, but that's getting off topic again. I think moderating, the moderation of comments is not a bad thing in my personal opinion, because sometimes I do like reading comments in other people's YouTube videos just for fun, because people kind of get a little trollish, and when people are fun about being trolls, those are the fun comments. But when people start getting really, really nasty, and it starts getting to the point of cyberbullying, which is still a thing that our government is trying to figure out how to completely moderate and prosecute, I feel that's completely fair to delete comments, because I know me personally, if my audience were to grow and my viewers started to go at one another and started to get to the point of comments like you should just kill yourself, et cetera, that's a no-go for me. That's something I do not tolerate. My video, like, I don't ever want a single video that I produce and create to ever once elicit a feeling of hatred towards another person to the point where they have to tell them you should just go kill yourself. If that were to ever happen, then that's just something that I need to personally evaluate in my video to figure out, okay, what is eliciting this feeling and this behavior? Now I'm getting way too psychological, but that's not something I tolerate. And that's something that I definitely would moderate and completely remove in its entirety, because that's not something that I want attached to my video. And that's not something I want said to another person.
Yep, that's definitely a valid point. Alex, what are your thoughts on the discussion topic, given that you were there when we discussed the whole news topic regarding Angry Joe?
Yeah, for me, I would say it doesn't violate your First Amendment privileges or your freedom of speech because, well, I'm barring you from commenting in a few specific places, be it from YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, wherever that I may be active. But you'll still have your own form. I can't stop you from going out and launching your own blog or your own YouTube channel to, totally come out and trash me. Yeah, I totally don't blame people for wanting to turn off the comments. I generally try not to do that myself. I'm not like I get a ton of comments, but it's just like, unfortunately, it's the internet and people. It's easy to hide behind the cloak of anonymity sometimes. Back when Drac did his whole spiel on his thoughts on Astalrius, he was kind of in the unpopular camp of opinions there, where he was kind of more, I'm not in support of these fan servers, and I'm more in support of Blizzard. Well, of course, people railed on him, and they railed on him hard for that video, and it got very, very personal. Not just personal towards him, but even personal towards his wife, who, of course, is also my sister. So I totally stand by him for disabling the comments on those videos, because people can be fucking dicks.
Oh, it was nasty. Drax showed me a couple of the comments back when we were doing Devil May Cry 3, and it made me feel sick inside. I was just like it was just that moment when you're brought back into reality and you truly remember, holy shit, this is the internet. This is the society of the internet that we are participating in. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. But I do see what you're saying there, Alex, in counter argument to what I stated about the First Amendment. I can completely agree with that. But sorry,
All right.
continue if I interrupted you.
No, I think I've said my piece. I just ultimately think moderating your own comment section, restricting your own comments, is in no way trouncing on your personal speech, because you can still say what you want and you can go off and say it in your own little corner of the world, and I can't stop you from that. That's my point, is you can go say it in your corner of the world, but it doesn't have to come to mine. I don't have to listen to that bullshit, and I don't want to. So that's why I'm totally in support. If people want to shut off the comments, they should.
Well, that's probably the most passionate and fiery I've seen Alex over the course of this entire show. So,
well, I mean, he's completely valid to those feelings. I saw what they said about his sister, and it's not like I know his sister like as well as I know Alex. But I mean, if anyone said that to one of my sisters, I would. Oh my gosh, I would not be a happy camper in the slightest.
yes. Well, that just goes to show this is a very, very intense topic. To kind of go into my thoughts on it, I mean, I've said it time and time again, where I've kind of gone into my interpretation of the First Amendment, and it came from a comic somebody uploaded to Tumblr. I'll have to dig it up next chance I get, where freedom of speech doesn't mean you're free to say everything everywhere. It just means that the government can't penalize you for it. Plus, not all forms of speech are considered free speech, as is the case with things like libelous or slanderous speech. That actually isn't protected. There have been cases that have set those precedent. And so the topic of disabling or moderating, now personally, outright disabling comments, while that feels like a very short-term solution. Now, I understand doing it on one video where the comment section has just become so toxic that it's basically a sunken ship at the point. There I can understand, okay, disabling it, that way you're not getting the blink, 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 blink every 3 minutes. That I can get, especially if it's on a case-by-case basis. Moderating comments, and I've seen some people really lose their minds over this, moderating, at least in my opinion, moderating comments is not against free speech, because again, the freedom of speech, as defined in the United States Constitution, simply means the government can't come after you. But it also means that, hey, it's a forum, because there's such things as speaking in a public forum where everyone in the community is allowed to have their say. But the best way to look at it is that YouTube comments on a particular video, on a particular channel, is like someone's house. You wouldn't go into someone's house and threaten to murder their wife and child in their own house. No sane person would do that. And likewise, if someone threatened any of my family members in my own house, I'm not going to let them stay in my freaking house. I'm going to kick them out, like any sane person would. And so it's just as much the right of the YouTuber to moderate their comments, especially, now granted, some YouTubers have the capacity to abuse it where they try to silence any forms of dissent, which is equally invalid. I mean, looking at the James Romney lawsuit, as well as a lot of the other multitudes of lawsuits we're seeing on Steam alone, it's something that can be abused, but I don't see it as something that is meant to stifle free speech if used properly. And that's why I think it's important that if you're going to have moderated comments, maybe not have just one person moderate, maybe have a group of moderators, if you have the manpower to do so. So that way you don't have just one person being the arbiter. And one handy little feature, and granted, this is a bit of a tangent, but if you're someone who has a YouTube channel, as a YouTube creator, you actually have a handy little feature called blocked words. You go into your creator studio, you go into your channel settings in the community page, and you literally type in a series of words. So it could be you can type in every single racial slur, every single type of insult. So for the sake of example, say the word jet lag became incredibly offensive, was like the most offensive racial slur anyone could ever say to anybody. You could go to this blocked words page, type in jet lag, and so anybody that tries to comment the word jet lag, the comment is immediately flagged as spam and doesn't show in the comment thread. And that's one of the good automated things YouTube has started to add that I think is an approach that a lot of people may not be aware of, is a feature of the blocked words thing where, okay, if you don't want someone rattling off every single racial epithet in the existence of mankind, type them into blocked words. Those comments immediately get filtered away as spam. meaning that no one else gets triggered by those comments, no one else gets those same impressions, and it helps cut down the work by a substantial amount. I've already used it on my videos because I still get, now, granted, some criticism is justified on some of the assholes that try to basically get a rise out of you. It's made it so much easier. It really has. So if you're a YouTuber who deals with those issues, take a look at the blocked words box, add the words that upset you or that you feel don't promote positive discourse or don't promote healthy discourse, and that helps cut down the work. But to get back to the main point, I don't see it as some moderating comments as something that is harmful. It's something that can be abused, but moderating comments in and of itself is not a violation of free speech and not harmful in and of itself.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I knew I had to work in that blocked words thing because, again, it's literally saved so much time on moderating my YouTube comments for those who are just trying to get a rise. But again, as I mentioned, internet video is going through its growing pains. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's the internet, you got to tough it up. But, well, it's one thing to, tough it up, but it's another to say, okay, clearly you are not contributing anything productive to the discussion relating to this video or to anything in this community, so I'm gonna just push you out the door. Like you would if someone was, say, shouting racial epithets on the floor of the Senate.
Yeah, that actually is a really, really good comparison. If it doesn't contribute to the community that you're creating or to the topic in which you're trying to produce, then there's no reason for it to be there.
Yeah, that's the approach I've always tried to have with my comment section. Is just like, if you're not really contributing anything to the video, whether you're going to say something to me, whether you just want to say I don't like your opinion, fine. But if you're just going to say your voice sounds like something retarded or whatever, then yeah, I'm just going to get rid of your comment because you're not adding anything.
And that's something I've encountered because, again, the Halloween remake comparison video is the one where I get a lot of the more nastier things. Now, granted, the stem of rabid Rob Zombie fans has kind of stemmed a little bit, but I still occasionally get some comments of people addressing some of the valid criticisms of that video where yes, my bias was clear going in watching the Rob Zombie remake, and I didn't really give it the fair shake it deserved. Those are valid comments, and I've since taken those to heart and have improved on later monster clashes. And so criticism like that, where it's actually attacking the arguments in the video, where it's actually addressing genuine flaws, that's important. It's important for creators to improve and to do better, especially if it's a political topic video. That type of discourse is important, where you can actually have a civil discussion, even if the person you're discussing with not violently, but vehemently disagrees with you. It's kind of like a few discussions I've had with people who identify as hardcore libertarians. I may not agree with libertarianism in its entirety, but I can at least have a civil discussion about what they think would work for the country and kind of bring up my points, because that is how we grow and learn and change. And moderating comments doesn't really impede that, so I don't really see why people flip out. I guess it's very much just a knee-jerk reaction where people are thinking, moderating is just a way of censorship, which, again, I acknowledge people have abused it, and people probably will continue to abuse it, as seen with, well, insert YouTube channel here. But it's not inherently harmful in and of itself. And I think I've more or less just reiterated everything I've already said, so...
No, sometimes things in repetition are needed so that people, understand, this is how life works. Like, these aren't... Like, this isn't just what we believe, and, you should take it with a grain of salt. Like, this is how it works. If you want, this is how happiness accrues in your life.
Yep, and most importantly, because it goes the other way, where if you're the kind of YouTuber who heavily censors any sort of criticism, how can you expect to get better? And I've seen YouTubers where the reason most people watch them is not because they're producing good content, but to watch basically the monkey rattling at the cages and throwing his poop at people when they deign to be criticized. And it's a case of, if you're filtering out all criticism, how do you expect to get better? I mean, look at like fanfiction.net or Wattpad or DeviantArt and just the utter madhouses that comment sections on those websites can get, and you see the problem where you have people who don't want criticism, but without criticism, they don't learn what they can do better. It's very much one of those topics that it's not going to be solved. Like, the three of us aren't going to suddenly solve all criticism forever on this show, because there's just so much. It's too big of a topic. Like, it's too big.
Oh yeah, it branches off into so many other subtopics that we can go on to, but we don't have all the time in the world, at least not tonight, to discuss it. So
Yeah.
so I think that I think that's where we have to like snip it before we do get into one of those branches.
Yes, especially, I mean, people have seen the Romney rant train. I don't think anyone's looking for an express trip on the Romney rant train anytime soon, because I don't have enough pillows. But on that note, given that Brenton's mentioned that we're running low on time, well, we're at a pretty good stopping point, since that is actually the end of our show. We've covered all of the stories and the discussion topics, so let's go ahead and go around. If people want to get a hold of you and discuss whether they agree or disagree with your opinions, granted, if it's in a respectful manner, if it's not, well, you've made it clear what will happen. Alex, where can people find you?
Well, find me here on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel, where, of course, I produce anime-related content, reviews, and other materials, and the occasional Let's Play. And to always stay up to date on what's going on terms of video updates and uploads, follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
All right, and Brenton, if people want to get a hold of you to discuss whether or not they agree or disagree with your opinions, or if they want to try to proselytize the wonders of YouTube Red, where can people find you?
You can also find me here at YouTube. I am Brenton Volley Gaming. I am your typical Let's Player, currently Let's Playing Super Mario Galaxy 2. I have been on a little bit of a hiatus due to the most recent expansion in Final Fantasy XIV Online. I will be getting a binging of Let's Playing done soon, so that I can get on to finishing Final Fantasy VII, which I had started a year ago. And then you can also find me on Twitter. My handle, I don't know why I almost said hashtag. My handle is bvolley01, and everything is just right here for you who are watching right now.
All right, and if people want to get a hold of me directly to either agree, disagree, or somehow post some random kvetches, if people actually know what that is. I'm not good at Yiddish, people, so bear with me. But you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews, no apostrophe. I am also on Twitter at RomneyReviews, and I also have a secondary home for my videos at vid.me/StudioGhost. I'm slowly trying to build that up, as that will be a second home to my more in-depth reviews that tend to put through the works here on YouTube. So if you have a VidMe account and want to see what I do without the shackles and confines of the YouTube copyright algorithm, that is where you can find that. I'll be uploading stuff to that channel shortly. And if you want to get a hold of the show directly, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel Drac2326, which is where Geek News Reviews and Opinions is normally hosted. Again, our good friend Adam is taking some much-needed time off to rest and relax. And so if you want to see the backlog of episodes or keep tabs on what we will be discussing, that is the YouTube channel where Geek News is hosted. You can also follow the show on Twitter at GeekyNRO. If you'd like to submit any comments or stories, you can also submit it to geekyweek@gmail.com. And if you're listening to us on your MP3 player of choice, be it an iPod or a Zune if you still have it somehow, you can also find our podcast at geekyweek.podomatic.com, where you can download the episodes as they go up to listen to them whether you're in the car, going for a run, or just wanting to listen to something beyond just the same 3 pop songs that are playing on the radio every single day. Let's see, so I got the email, the Twitter, the face. Oh yeah, and also we have a Facebook page, Geek News Reviews and Opinions on Facebook. You can find it, like it, know when we're going live, when we're doing this, that, and the other, whether we've got any collaborations between the various panelists. And so that is another place where you can find this show. And well, that is pretty much it for this episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions. Thank you to both Brinton and Alex for joining me tonight. And well, for me, for Alex, for Brinton, and for Adam, who we wish all our thoughts and prayers go to him and hope he can recover, this is it for our show, so we hope you all have a wonderful night.